In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 NBA games happening on December 27, 2025, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets. As we provide these videos on a daily basis, I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 NBA games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Dallas Mavericks versus Sacramento Kings. The Mavericks are still dealing with a pretty rough injury situation, with Kyrie Irving, Dante Exum, and Derek Lively out, while Anthony Davis and Brandon Williams are both listed as questionable. That is a lot of moving parts for one team, even before you factor in any late scratches or minutes restrictions. On the other side, the Kings have already ruled out Zach LaVine, Domantas Sabonis, and Keegan Murray, with Devin Carter carrying a questionable tag. So both teams are walking into this matchup a little patched together, which makes the mental side of things matter more than usual. The Mavericks really need a win here to steady themselves after a tough stretch, and this spot sets up nicely for them emotionally and situationally. And they look like they have found the right kind of opponent in the Kings, a team that has struggled to keep games competitive even when DeRozan and Westbrook put up big numbers. That sort of profile tends to crack under sustained pressure, especially when depth and confidence are both issues. Now, there is a fair reason to hesitate. The Mavericks are just 3-10 SU on the road this season, and that record tells you plenty about their inconsistency when they pack their bags. They also have not really earned the benefit of the doubt as favorites most nights, and that is worth keeping in mind rather than just brushing aside for convenience. Here is the thing though, this handicap leans more on what the Kings are not doing than on what the Mavericks are doing well. The Kings have only 7 wins on the season, and they have already dropped 10 games at home, which is a brutal way to treat your own floor. When a team cannot protect its home court, it rarely commands much trust, no matter how attractive the price tag might look at first glance. Against the spread, the Kings are sitting at 12-17 ATS, which pretty much confirms the eye test. They are not just losing, they are failing to meet expectations consistently, which wipes away a lot of betting value. Honestly, I would feel better with a cleaner Mavericks injury report, but this is one of those spots where there really are not many excuses available. The Kings are playing bad basketball, and that is putting it politely. It is unfortunate that there is still an injury cloud hanging over Davis, since that adds one more variable to a game that already has plenty. Even so, the expectation here is that this banged-up Mavericks group still finds a way to handle business. If they are serious about preventing this season from slipping completely off the rails, these are exactly the games they have to win, even if it is not pretty. As our first pick for this matchup, the Dallas Mavericks to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Sacramento Kings are averaging 111.7 points on 46.6% shooting and allowing 122.9 points on 49.8% shooting. That gap between what they score and what they give up is pretty striking, and it hints at sloppy defense and some empty offensive trips, even when the raw scoring number looks decent. From deep, the Kings are hitting 35.3% of their three-point attempts and 75.9% at the free throw line. Defensively, they are allowing 35.1% shooting from the arc and pulling down 39.9 rebounds per game. So you get this mix of moderate efficiency on offense, shaky resistance on defense, and limited rebounding, which often leads to streaky scoring rather than a constant shootout. The Mavericks, for their part, are averaging 113.6 points on 46.6% shooting and allowing 117.4 points on 46.2% shooting. Their offensive numbers suggest they can score in stretches, but their defense gives enough back that you end up with long swings both ways. They are shooting 33.4% from 3 and 76% from the free throw line, which is not exactly lights out, especially if injuries squeeze their shot creation. On defense, the Mavericks are allowing 33.1% shooting from beyond the arc and grabbing 44.5 rebounds per game. That rebounding edge compared to the Kings can slow extra possessions for Sacramento and cut down on some of the second chance chaos that usually pushes totals higher. So even though both defenses give up their fair share, the combination of imperfect shooting, injury questions, and potential for some choppy half-court possessions leans toward a lower scoring outcome than the raw season averages might suggest at first glance. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Denver Nuggets versus Orlando Magic. The Nuggets are still shorthanded, with Christian Braun, Aaron Gordon, and Cameron Johnson out of the lineup. On the other side, the Magic are in even rougher shape, having already ruled out Jalen Suggs, Moritz Wagner, Franz Wagner, and Goga Bitadze. That is a lot of rotational firepower missing for both sides, but especially for Orlando, and it shows up not just on the box score but in how clunky their rotations can look. Denver comes in as one of the hottest teams in the league, and they have every reason to feel good after that dramatic overtime win against the red-hot Timberwolves on Christmas Day. Those kinds of wins have a way of tightening up a locker room and giving a group that extra bit of swagger on the road. Offensively, the Nuggets are in a great groove. They are leading the league in scoring, in field goal percentage, and in three-point percentage, which is basically the offensive trifecta. Their star big man is averaging a triple-double, which not only drives their scoring, it also makes life easier for the role players who are constantly getting clean looks. By contrast, Orlando has long stretches where the offense just does not look right, especially with its shooting. The Magic sit only 16th in field goal percentage and a disappointing 27th from three. That is a lot of empty possessions when your opponent is as efficient as Denver. Defensively, Orlando has been middling too, ranking 22nd in field goal percentage allowed and 15th in three-point percentage allowed. So even when they get stops, it is not exactly lockdown stuff, more like good enough if the offense is humming, which it often is not. From a betting angle, Denver has been rewarding backers lately. They have covered the spread in 5 of their last 7 games, including that 126-115 win over Orlando on December 18th, where they got the money as a 4.5 home favorite. Orlando, meanwhile, has burned tickets over the same kind of sample, failing to cover in each of its last 5, going 0-4-1 ATS and just 2-3 straight up. That combination of shaky form and mounting injuries is not what you want when you are stepping in front of a confident opponent. The Nuggets have actually been at their best away from home this season, where they are 12-3 straight up. That is a serious road profile, especially when you contrast it with a Magic team that is not only banged up but also playing the second leg of a back-to-back. Throw in a home loss to the Hornets, which is hardly a ringing endorsement, and you can see why their margin for error feels tiny. Orlando still has those stretches where the offense is completely stuck in the mud. Take out multiple rotation players and that problem gets magnified because suddenly the same guys are asked to create more against better defenses on tired legs. You could argue there is always a chance Denver has a letdown after an emotional win. And that is fair, but the spot just leans heavily the other way. The recent history supports that too. The Nuggets beat the Magic by 11 less than 2 weeks ago, while shooting a ridiculous 56% from the field. It is hard enough to handle Denver when you are rested and healthy. Trying to do it with injured players and no rest is like trying to play catch-up on a treadmill. You just never feel balanced. These teams met on December 18th, and Denver rolled to that 126-115 victory at home. There is not much reason to expect a radically different script here, especially with Orlando on the back end of a back-to-back and missing so many key names. The line is relatively short for what Denver has been doing, so siding with the Nuggets to keep the hot road streak going makes plenty of sense. As our first pick for this matchup, the Denver Nuggets to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Denver Nuggets are averaging 125.2 points on 51.5% shooting and allowing 116.6 points on 47% shooting. That is a very high scoring average, but it is also tied to a level of offensive efficiency that is hard to sustain every single night, especially when opponents are short-handed and the game flow can slow down a bit. From deep, Denver is shooting 40.6% from 3 and 82% at the free throw line. They are allowing 35% from beyond the arc and pulling down 44.1 rebounds per game. That rebounding edge matters because it limits second chance looks for Orlando and can quietly chip away at the total by cutting out those extra scramble possessions that tend to inflate scores. The Magic, for their part, are averaging 117.2 points on 46.8% shooting and allowing 114.8 points on 47.8% shooting. They are clearly capable of putting up points, but remember, the earlier analysis already flagged how often their offense can stall and how much their shooting can betray them. From 3, they are at 34.3%, and they are shooting 78.9% at the line. Defensively, Orlando is allowing 35.7% shooting from deep while grabbing 45 rebounds per game. So both teams rebound reasonably well, and that can cut both ways. On one hand, it helps start fast breaks, but on the other hand, when a short-handed team like Orlando is on tired legs in a back-to-back, it can slow the pace because they are not eager to run every trip. When you factor in the injuries for the Magic, their streak of poor covers, and the noted offensive inconsistency, it becomes easier to see a game where they simply do not fully match their usual scoring average. A tired, thin rotation tends to settle for more jumpers and fewer downhill attacks, which is rarely a recipe for consistently high scoring. Denver will still get its looks, but if the Magic sag even a little on offense, the total can land lower than the raw season averages suggest. Put together, the combination of Denver's efficiency, Orlando's banged-up offense, and the back-to-back spot points more toward a game that leans under the projected number rather than a full-on track meet. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Phoenix Suns versus New Orleans Pelicans. The Suns are still dealing with a short-handed rotation, with Jalen Green and Grayson Allen sidelined, while the Pelicans are in a similar spot after ruling out DeJounte Murray and Herbert Jones and listing Jordan Poole as questionable. It feels like Phoenix has been stuck in this weird loop where they cannot string together a long winning streak, but then they flash their upside with that big statement win over the Lakers that reminded everyone how high their ceiling really is. New Orleans had their own little glow-up during that 5-game win streak. They looked sharper, more confident, almost like a different group, but that momentum took a hit with that rough loss on Tuesday that snapped the rhythm and cooled the buzz. So coming into this matchup, Phoenix arrives as the team in better overall form, at least on paper, and they showed that again by doing just enough to get the job done against the Pelicans last night. Even so, it was hardly a walk in the park. The Suns never pushed the lead beyond 9, which tells you New Orleans kept nudging and clawing and never really let the game tilt into blowout territory. Phoenix is the clear favorite again. That part is not a surprise, but it is always tricky trying to beat the same opponent twice in a row on their home floor. The fatigue, the adjustments, and even the crowd's memory all start to matter. The Pelicans proved they could hang around for 4 quarters despite their cold shooting night, and that kind of resilience, where shots are not falling but the game still stays within reach, usually says a lot about how live an underdog really is in a quick rematch spot. There is one thing worth flagging as a potential confusion in the analysis. You mentioned the Suns looking great in a massive win over the Lakers in their last outing, then later described them getting the job done last night against the Pelicans, so it might sound like there are 2 different last games being referenced. If the Lakers game was actually 2 outings ago and the Pelicans game was the most recent one, you may want to tweak that wording in your final script so the timeline feels a bit clearer to the audience. As our first pick for this matchup, the New Orleans Pelicans to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Phoenix is scoring in the mid-1 per night and giving up a similar number, but they do it with a pretty measured tempo. They get stops, they lean on half-court execution, and their defense is quietly in the better end of the league when you look at points allowed. New Orleans scores a touch more on paper, but the real story is their defense, one of the leakier units in the league, giving up well over 120 a game and doing it in a very specific way. Here is the thing, the Pelicans are not racing up and down launching 35 made threes a night. They are near the bottom of the league in made threes, right around 10 makes per game, while their opponents are closer to 15. So they are bleeding points because they lose the math battle, not because the game turns into a track meet. Their offense is built around Zion and the bigs smashing the paint, drawing contact, and forcing trips to the stripe. That style creates a lot of possessions that look chaotic and loud, drives, collisions, bodies hitting the floor, but the clock is constantly stopping for free throws, reviews, and substitutions. We got the perfect example in that first matchup. New Orleans lived at the line with over 40 free throw attempts. Phoenix bricked threes at an almost comical rate, 8 makes on 40 tries, and the game still landed in the low 220s on the scoreboard. It felt wild. It sounded wild. The whistle never stopped, but the math quietly sat well under that lofty posted total. Nothing about tonight's setup really fixes the things that slow the scoring down. The Suns are still without Jalen Green, so their offensive burst is more about Booker reading the game, hitting mid-range jumpers, and leaning on pick-and-roll chemistry with Williams and the shooters. That works, but it is more surgeon than sprinter. On the Pelicans side, Murray remains shelved, Jones is working through that ankle, and their guard rotation has been a revolving door of questionable, probable, and limited tags. That pushes them into lineups that defend and scrap, but do not always flow offensively. And do not forget the schedule quirk. Rematches in the same building on consecutive days often turn into more physical, more deliberate games. Everybody has fresh film from last night, coaches have very specific adjustments ready, and players are a little more banged up and a little more sick of one another. Referees also tend to tighten things up once they have felt the temperature of the first game. All of that nudges you toward a second game that is heavy on half-court possessions, free throws, and contested shots, which is great if you like late-game drama, but not so great if you need both teams hurtling toward 240 combined points. Put simply, for this total to soar into the high 230s, you would probably need both teams to catch fire from deep on the same night, or for the game to slip into overtime. Given what we know about New Orleans' three-point volume, Phoenix's defensive ceiling, the injury-hit guard depth on both sides, and how the first meeting actually played out on the floor, the cleaner story is that we get another game that feels intense but finishes at a much more reasonable total. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Cleveland Cavaliers versus Houston Rockets. Cleveland is still short-handed without Larry Nance Jr. and Max Strus, and Houston is once again without Fred VanVleet, with Alperen Sengun carrying that annoying questionable tag. The Cavaliers should be eager to get back out there after fumbling their Christmas Day game, and there is a bit of pride involved when you blow that kind of lead on a holiday showcase. The problem for them is that walking into Houston right after the Rockets hammered the Lakers 119-96 is not exactly a gentle reset spot. Houston's recent form looks messy at first glance, with a 3-5 straight-up record and 2-6 against the spread in their last 8. That long 6-game road trip did their defense no favors, and you could see the cracks in their numbers, so that big home win over the Lakers is more than just a feel-good moment. It is a sign that their defense might be stabilizing again. For backers, that kind of bounce-back game is like seeing your stock finally go green after a week of red. Matchup-wise, Houston actually has bodies to throw at Donovan Mitchell, which matters when the opponent's offense leans so heavily on one elite guard. On the other side of the ball, the Cavaliers' defense has a serious task on its hands here. Cleveland has not guarded the three-point line well so far, which is a strange setup against a Rockets team that ranks dead last in three-point rate but knocks down a very high percentage when they actually let it fly. It is a bit of a contradiction, right? A team that takes very few threes facing a defense that struggles to defend them, but that can still be dangerous if Houston chooses its spots and hunts clean looks. Their first meeting this season already showed some of those themes. Houston won the battle on the glass 51-39 and shot 9 for 24 from deep, while Cleveland went just 12 for 39 from 3 and trailed by as many as 22. That is not a fluky two-possession game. That is a team getting outworked on the boards and outplayed on the perimeter for long stretches. Cleveland is at least getting healthier, with Evan Mobley back in the rotation, and if they do not implode against the Knicks on Christmas, you are probably talking about a 3-game winning streak instead of a team licking its wounds. Even so, they still have a lot to prove to bettors. They are just 9-23 against the spread on the season, a cover rate of 28.1%, which makes them one of the clearest money burners in the league right now. You can talk yourself into they are due if you want, but the market does not pay you for sympathy. Both teams are playing below their ceiling, so you would not want to unload your entire bankroll on either side with blind confidence. Still, there is more to like with Houston at this moment, especially with that rebounding edge, their efficient three-point shooting, and Cleveland's awful spread record hanging over everything. Sengun's status does muddy things a bit, since he is central to what Houston does, but even with that uncertainty, the matchup and form point more toward the Rockets taking care of business against a Cavaliers group that keeps letting tickets die. Until Cleveland shows it can cover consistently, fading them remains the more comfortable position for a full-game side. As our first pick for this matchup, the Houston Rockets to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full-game side pick. Cleveland is averaging 120 points on 46.3% shooting and giving up 117.5 points on 46.8% shooting. They are hitting 34.8% from deep and 78% at the free throw line, while allowing opponents to shoot 37.3% from 3 and grabbing 44.5 rebounds per game. Houston is putting up 120.6 points on 48.7% shooting and allowing 112.7 points on 46.2% shooting. From beyond the arc, they are at a blistering 40%, also sitting at 78.2% from the line and collecting 48.7 rebounds per game. On paper, if you only looked at those averages, you might expect fireworks and casually lean toward a higher scoring script. Here is the thing, the details do not automatically scream track meet. Houston's rebounding edge, at nearly 4 extra boards per game compared to Cleveland, hints at a team that can control possessions, limit second chances for the opponent, and slow things down once it has a lead. That type of control can quietly shave a few possessions off a game, especially if the Rockets are comfortable managing the clock. Cleveland's defense, for all its problems guarding the arc, is still facing a Houston team that shoots threes very well but does not rely on them heavily in terms of volume. So while the Rockets can punish mistakes from deep, this is not necessarily a constant barrage of threes from both sides. If the Cavaliers again struggle to convert at a high clip from outside, you can end up with a game where the scoring is more uneven than explosive, with dry spells baked in. We have already seen one meeting where Houston dominated stretches, hit threes efficiently, and still did not need wild scoring from both sides to build a large lead. In a similar script, with Houston's efficiency, rebounding strength, and both teams living a bit below their offensive peak at times, the total can land lower than those shiny averages suggest. So while the raw points per game numbers lean one way, the matchup and tendencies can reasonably guide you toward a more measured scoring outcome that falls short of the projected number for this contest. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Milwaukee Bucks versus Chicago Bulls. The Bucks are still without Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they are also missing Taurean Prince and Gary Trent Jr., while the Bulls are expected to be at full strength for this matchup. The absence of their main star has dragged Milwaukee into its roughest stretch of the season, and that heavy loss to a short-handed Grizzlies team last night probably did not help morale in that locker room one bit. Without Giannis, the Bucks keep dropping games and battling scoring issues, and it is hard to suddenly expect a clean offensive performance on the second night of a back-to-back. Chicago also played last night, but the Bulls avoid the travel drain, and they have actually rediscovered some rhythm over the past week or so. That comeback win over the 76ers is the kind of result that can glue a group together and give them the belief that, even when things go sideways early, they can still reel a game back in. The Bucks still have enough talent to make this interesting, and sure, they have a puncher's chance to steal one on the road if shots fall and the defense wakes up for a night. But on balance, the Bulls are rightfully the favorites here, especially with their healthier roster and Milwaukee still leaning on patchwork lineups. It is tough to give the Bucks much respect in their current form, particularly when their most important player is still out and the offense looks choppy for long stretches. Given that context, the number being asked of Chicago feels pretty fair rather than inflated, which makes it easier to land on the home side. As our first pick for this matchup, the Chicago Bulls to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Both teams allow north of 116 points per game, which already tilts things toward a more open scoreboard. Chicago's recent outcomes have been trending toward higher totals, with the Bulls hovering around 120 points per game on offense, and they have not exactly turned every game into a defensive clinic. Milwaukee, for all its current problems, can still score enough to keep totals honest, even in losses, especially if their shooters get into any sort of rhythm. If this one stays competitive, you can reasonably expect the pace and shot volume to cooperate with a higher number. Chicago's confidence on offense after that comeback against Philadelphia and Milwaukee's ability to contribute points even while struggling defensively both support a script where the scoreboard keeps moving. So if the tempo holds and neither side completely stalls for long stretches, the higher total has solid justification in this particular matchup. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.